Joining hands is Scotty Wednesday for the Cougar Preview Show, brought to you by Beehive Meals. We're joined now by Shehan Jeyarajah, CBS Sports national college football writer and analyst. Shehan, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's Utah BYU week, and we can't get into the game without analyzing what they just did. They both won. What'd you think about the way they won, and does it tell you anything about the rivalry game or throw the records out the window and all that stuff?
Well, I think throw the records out for sure. I think BYU looked like a team that was looking ahead just a little bit, whereas I think Utah, they know that they don't have any margin for error after that early season loss. But I think that coming out of week 6, both these teams are obviously rolling 5-1, 6-0. I think that this is potentially a Big 12 title game play-in game. Now, of course, Texas Tech is almost certainly going to be the other team in that game. They've already beaten Utah. They get BYU later this year as well. But I think that with the way that things line up, with the level that these two teams have played at relative to the rest of the conference, with certainly Sam Leavitt's injury at Arizona State, I think that these two teams have a really good case to be number 2 and 3 in the Big 12 in whatever order you want to put them. So this is a huge game. You can almost call this an early playoff game, I think, in Provo, and I'm really excited for this one.
Yeah, so are we, obviously. I think you can throw in Cincinnati as the three teams fighting for one berth. I'm not sure that I see anybody else besides those three teams with the opportunity to join Texas Tech in the Big 12 title game.
Yeah, I think that those are definitely the favorites to this point. This is the thing about the Big 12, right, is that every loss is so costly. And with Arizona State, I was very excited by them through the first couple of weeks, but this is how fast things can change, right? Your quarterback goes out, and I think that not having a tiebreaker against Utah is going to be a really difficult situation. And by the way, Arizona State now hosts Texas Tech. We'll see how they hang, but it's going to be really tough for them to get back in. TCU, this is a team that I had a lot of optimism about, but ultimately, they just haven't taken care of business. They lose to Kansas State last week. There are a lot of teams that are kind of right on that cusp. Iowa State, of course, being another after some of their struggles lately. But, I think that the teams that take care of business when they're supposed to are the ones that are going to have the best chance.
In the Utah-BYU game, we got two teams that are running the ball really well, but they don't throw it that well. Do you trust either one a little more to make big plays through the air, or are you thinking more special teams decides this? Or one team runs the ball and the other doesn't, just dominates the line of scrimmage?
Yeah, I think that I do give a clear edge to the way that Utah is running the ball right now. Now, I think that, when it comes to sort of pure running back run stuff, I think that BYU acquits itself really well. But I think that the quarterback run game and the offensive line as well, I think just gives Utah a little bit of that edge. But the thing that I'll kind of respond to that with is that I think that BYU's receivers are way better than what Utah is throwing out there right now. And by the way, while Bear Bachmeier is hasn't been asked to do a lot as a passer, I think he's handled those moments really, really well to this point. Obviously it helps when you have some of the playmakers that you have, but I do think that this stuff is real. And so I think that BYU is going to be able to put together a more diversified game plan than Utah. I think that Utah, while, again, I think it's going to be very effective, I think that it'll also almost by necessity become pretty, predictable, I guess you could say. And, again, so a lot of it's going to come down to, how does BYU deal with this Utah run game? Can they prevent explosive plays? Can they keep them under wraps for the most part? I'll tell you what, it's a huge deal that Isaiah Glasker wasn't ultimately ejected for targeting and have to miss the first half of this game, because I think he might be the most important player in the game for BYU. But I do think that offensively, BYU is just a little bit more diverse. And, here's the reality as well, is that they're 6-0, and they really haven't had to open up the playbook to this point, except for maybe a little bit in that fourth quarter when they come back from a 10-point deficit.
How about this? You got BYU, ranked 15th, I think it is. They're at home. They're 17-2 in their last 19, and they're the underdog. How about just playing the disrespect card? Because I don't think it gets any worse than this.
I love it. No, and look, I think that you can make a pretty good case that over the last 2 years, BYU has been the single most disrespected program in college football.
Right.
I mean, they go on the road and win a game over a playoff team in week 2 last year, and it's like it never even happened.
Amen. Preach.
They obviously go 11-2. I don't think they're talked about as a team like this. And look, I think it was fair to certainly ask questions about their Big 12 chances in 2025 after losing a quarterback. But they've showed to this point, kind of what I hoped, right? That this is a team that will get enough from the quarterback position, and they're really, really good everywhere else. So, I think that this is a team that absolutely deserves more credit than they've got. I think here's the thing, we always talk about the idea of obviously like the brand names getting a little bit of that credit, like the Alabamas and all that. I think that, in their own way, Utah has been that in this world, right? Where they, not unfairly, but have gotten kind of the benefit of the doubt. But you start to see, even as BYU has the success, it doesn't feel like that benefit of the doubt has come to the same extent. Now, that what you kind of throw on top of that is, if you win this game, I think that it changes the conversation around BYU this year. I think that all of a sudden you start getting into legitimate top 10 conversations. You start getting into legitimate college football playoff conversations. We're actually doing our second chance expert picks over at CBSSports.com right now. They come out this week. And I wish that we could wait one more week so I could see the results of this game. But right now, I have BYU as number 11 in my college football playoff projection. So I think that this is a huge opportunity for this team to kind of rewrite their narrative because, like we've talked about extensively over the years, this is a team that won 11 games last year, that's 6-0 right now, and it does not feel like they're talked about like that.
See, that's awesome. You got to have that writers' roundtable thing. Everybody there at CBS Sports, who's the most disrespected team in America? People love that stuff. And then you can make your BYU pitch, and they'll pitch whoever they pitch.
Well, listen, if they win this game, I think it'll be much, much easier for me to get to pull some of that again next week.
When you step back a little bit and go big picture, I'm embarrassed for the sport that not necessarily that James Franklin gets fired, but that they would fire him knowing that somebody has to pay $49 million. The emphasis on winning is just out of control as far as that goes. And get $49 million, what that can mean for some people who could use that money, obviously, and we're going to pay it to a disposed college football coach because he lost a couple games. I don't know that you're really going to fire him because he lost to Oregon in overtime, but then you throw on the other two, I guess. Obviously, they're bad losses, but somebody thought it was a good idea to go ahead and do that, and they probably already have the donors willing to pay that money. Winning is out of control in this sport.
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because, look, it's been a terrible year. Like it 100% has. They're the first team in 30 years to lose consecutive games as 20-point favorites. They're the first preseason number 2 since 1965 to start 3-3. Like, there's no underselling just how bad this is, right? But it's one of those situations, right, where, one, James Franklin has won a lot of games over a lot of years. And there's a lot of coaches in college football who have not won at the level that he has. 2, you're going to have to go out and get somebody, and this is ultimately going to be probably when it's all said and done, like a $75 million expense when it comes to paying new staff, paying staff buyouts, paying James Franklin's buyout, all of that, right? So are you going to get $75 million better of coach? I just don't know the answer to that question, right? I just don't know that there's an obvious answer that's a clear upgrade. Now, I think, the early conversation has centered on Matt Rule from Nebraska, a coach who, I know a little bit from his time at Baylor, and I think he's a fantastic coach, Penn State alum. I think he'd do a good job there. Is he clearly doing something different, though, than what James Franklin did? And is he doing $75 million worth more than what James Franklin did? I don't really think so. Again, I'm a big fan of Matt Rule. I don't know that that's the case. And the other piece of this, too, that's been interesting is we've seen other than Jimbo, nothing like this, obviously, but we've seen teams quickly fire coaches when moments go bad, pay big buyouts, have a lot of dead money. But it's almost historically always been in the SEC, where people are more reactionary, where there's more fervency, where there's more urgency. We haven't really seen this almost ever in the Big Ten. Even if you want to talk about just the non-SEC, like Notre Dame paid a big buyout to get Charlie Weiss out of there. I think that it's fair to say that was pretty deserved at the time. But like this hasn't happened in the Big Ten or in the North, wherever you want to talk about it. So it's definitely a bizarre situation from that perspective to me. Of it feels like, obviously the Big Ten has won the last two national championships. It feels like that's adding a new level of pressure to other contenders in that conference, because if Oregon can pop up, obviously Ohio State and Michigan, Indiana right now is a top 3 team. Like I think that the pressure is starting to rise quicker than ever. And by the way, Penn State invested a tremendous amount of money in this 2025 roster, and the dividends are not paying out. All of these things are going to add up to, I think, change the dynamics at some of these programs to something very different than it's been historically.
Okay, then just spare me whatever pregame piece on whatever website or whatever TV show about we're here teaching these kids about life and you got to work hard and invest in overtime. Because over here, a guy's 13-3 in the national semis with 2 playoff wins, and he starts 3-0, and 3 weeks later he's fired. This isn't about 5-year rebuilding plans. It's not even about 3 years. It's not about 2, which has turned into a year and a half at Oregon State and at UCLA on down the line. This is now like, no matter how good you are, if you lose 3 in a row, if you have injuries, if the energy goes bad, you lose a big game and the guys got to fly cross country and don't bounce back. Energy went bad to the Eagles and they lost to the Giants. Like sometimes you don't have it. In football, you need the spirit. Nope. Sorry, you guys were down this week. You're gone. Here's your $49 million. Get out the door. It just sounds like the world's upside down to me. And what are we doing?
No, and I think that there's a really good comparison here, right, which is the coaches in the state of Utah, BYU, Kalani Sitake, they go 5-7 in their first season, and people, freak out a little bit. And, for Utah, right, they have these 2 straight years of being extremely lackluster, including going 5-7 last year. But the focus was always, okay, well, let's figure out if we can get more out of this guy. Let's figure out if we invest in certain ways, if we give him some help, if we give him some time, if they can figure it out. It took one dang year for Kalani Sitake to turn 5-7 to 11-2, right? Like, I think that sometimes, and I want to be clear at Penn State too, right? Like, I understand that this was kind of a culmination roster for this team. It was, retaining a bunch of guys who were not promised comeback. There's a really decent chance that Penn State, if they had kept James Franklin, wouldn't have as talented a roster as they do in 2025 for a very long time. But, I mean, again, it's like, do you deal with some of those growing pains that you're going to have to go through, by the way, with a new coach regardless, to try to let him build back? Or do you just kind of say, we're done here? And, it's funny. I have a friend who lives in State College, not a sports fan at all. And he actually works at a church. And he texted me, he's like, why is this old lady cursing James Franklin's name in the church? Who is James Franklin? And I'm like, well, I got a story to tell you. So I understand. Like, the vibes have gotten very bad there. But I think that lack of patience ultimately is going to hurt much more long-term for some of these programs than it's going to help.
Has Indiana erased all doubts?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this team is here. This team is for real. It's real and it's beautiful. And I think that you look at last year, I mean, defensively, they hung with the best last year. Like, they gave themselves a chance. It's been the offense that hasn't been ready for prime time. And I point to one particular drive that to me felt like this is a championship drive. After Fernando Mendoza, a really good quarterback, throws a pick 6 to Oregon to tie the game, they go 12 plays, 75 yards, more than 6 minutes for a touchdown to burn more than half of the remaining time in the fourth quarter to physically bully an Oregon team who obviously is really, really good and exceptional in the trenches. and put that game away. Like, that's what championship teams do. We thought Georgia do it, by the way, against Auburn. Indiana was able to do the same thing against an Oregon team that was ranked in the top 3. That's impressive stuff. That's the sort of thing that we haven't seen. I thought the addition of Roman Hemby at running back was a very underrated dynamic, and look, he's not gonna get you 7 yards per carry, but he's gonna get you 3.5 really tough physical yards. And I think that that's what this team needed almost above anything else. So this Indiana team is for real. This team, I think, along with Ohio State, are easily the top contenders in the Big Ten. I think they're very much capable of contending for a national championship. And again, it's always hard to go on your first run, right? So hopefully they've had an opportunity to learn from that 2024 team and accomplish even more in 2025.
John, we appreciate it as always. Great talking college football with you. Enjoy the games this week, and we will talk to you again next week.
Thank you so much for having me.
Shehan Jeyarajah joining us, CBS Sports national college football writer and analyst. Bronco Mendenhall, Aggie football coach, is going to join us next. Back at a bad second half. We'll talk with him right after the break right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.